All right, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane. And yeah, I know you don't think I'm gonna make this video and tell you to expect that Sipho Mbule is gonna break lines at Orlando Pirates, that he's gonna be press resistant, that opposition player is gonna try to get the ball off him and they're not gonna be able to. He's gonna pick up the ball from the defense and he's gonna drive past them. Or if he doesn't drive past them, he's gonna find Relebohile Mofokeng and all of the, well, that's if Relebohile Mofokeng is still playing for us, but that's a topic for another day. He's going to find Tito Maswanganye in advanced positions. He's going to find Mohankota and he's going to find all of these players that are going to be playing ahead of him. I know you don't expect me to make that video because that's very obvious and it will make for a boring video. That's something you already know. I know sometimes we like hearing boring things because we like to indulge ourselves with the kind of player that we've got. And so we want to hear as much as we can around the things that we already know about him. But I'm not going to create that video. There's too many of those videos that I also watch myself on YouTube and I very much enjoy. But I figure it would be boring for me to make that video. It's too obvious. But what I want to do in this video, when I want to talk about what to expect, is something. Upon reflecting on a statement that I made in my previous video where I spoke about Sipho Mbule for 6 minutes, which felt like it was too little, because I have so many thoughts around him. But upon reflecting on one of the statements that I made, which was this, the statement was, I expect Sipho Mbule coming to Orlando Pirates. Pirates is saying, we're willing to risk that if he gives us 15 games in a season, we're going to be in good stead because he's that supremely talented. That's the statement I made. I made the statement that I think Orlando Pirates is risking, even though Sipho Mbule has shown a lack of professionalism, they're saying we're willing to pick him up, thinking that if he can just give us 15 games, with the squad we already have, he'll be a luxury player for us. And he will stand us in good stead. Those 15 games will do a world of good for us if he can play them. I still trust in part of that statement that I made, which is to say, if he plays some games, we're going to be in good stead. It's particularly the fact that I assume that he's going to play 15 games that upon reflection, I'm kind of coming back and saying, hey, I actually want to talk about this because I've looked at some numbers. Now, I'm no statistician, I beg your pardon. I don't have complicated, sophisticated data. You can go to Optajabu and all these sorts of like statistics companies for that. I'm just looking at very simple stats that are available to all of us. And for someone who's very simple like myself, I can look at them and draw logic out of them. Very simple data I looked at. And here's what I picked up. In the last 3 seasons, or maybe let's say in the last, I'll start here. In the last time Sipho Mbule played 15 games or more. And I'll explain because people will look at the stats and they'll see that he had 19 appearances. But appearances are often misleading because an appearance, if I get on the pitch for 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes of the game, 88th minute, and I get on and I touch the ball once, that counts as an appearance. If I make 2 minutes appearances for 30 games in a season, I will have 30 appearances, which is I appeared in all the league matches. However, my minutes amounted to 60 minutes altogether, 2 minutes in each game, which it's fair to say, I think we can all agree, no one will impact a season unless they're like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or something. And the football nerds will know what I'm talking about. No one will impact football matches with 2 minutes the whole season. in every game. And so you need to look at something else other than appearances to kind of get a feel for how often was he playing. And for me, I look at the minutes that he has played. And in a PSL season, the minutes available to every player, given there are 15 games in the first round, and then there are 30 games altogether, meaning that if you multiply 90 minutes by 30 games, what you get is a total of 2,700 minutes which are available for every player to play. Now, those numbers, very rarely players will record even something like 2,400 minutes, because of obviously the games are intense, and it will just cause fitness concerns and injuries and those sort of things. Very rarely, but the freaks that do play those games, the goalkeepers, I'm joking. Well, there are freaks who do play those games, especially defenders and players that are just very fit. They do play, but most players, you expect that they'll play something. If they're a regular player, they're a regular starter in their team, they'll play something like 2,100 minutes, which is about 80% of those minutes, right? And we often think of those guys. When we think of someone who's always playing, I dare you to go and check, you'll find that player is often playing around 2,100 to about 2,400 minutes, which is about 80 to 90% of the overall minutes. Because players get injured, they get substituted and all of those things, which decreases the minutes. But for regular starters who are always playing, it's just around those figures, 2,100 to about 2,400 for a regular starter. And that's about 8 to 9 games out of 10 without getting substituted on average. Now, I looked at Sipho Mbule. The last time he had that kind of season was when he was at SuperSport United. I think it might have been the season before he goes to Mamelodi Sundowns, or the season prior to that, the penultimate season before the season he goes to Mamelodi Sundowns. He records something like 2,100 minutes, I think, which is to say he played about 80% of the games, looking at them as minutes. So he played 80% of games where he completed all of those games and he was on the pitch and didn't get substituted. That's what 2,100 minutes means. And I think the other season he played something like 1.5, which would be around maybe just above half, which would make it a good 15 games out of 30. So if you think of the whole season, that would be a good 15 games that I spoke of out of 30, where he played all of those games and didn't get substituted, right? 15, and then he missed the rest of those minutes. But ever since getting his big move to Mamelodi Sundowns, which is actually where I'm going to start focusing on him, ever since getting his big move to Mamelodi Sundowns, because I think it would be a worthless exercise to look at his minutes at SuperSport United, although they're important, don't get me wrong. But I do think that, it's fairly easier, and I think we can agree on that. It's easier to get minutes at SuperSport United than at a big club, like Orlando Pirates, like Mamelodi Sundowns. And I'm gonna think of his playing time at Mamelodi Sundowns as comparable to his playing time at Orlando Pirates, because I do think that both clubs are just bolstered with options, and very good options at that. I know that's going to cause a lot of argument, but I'm just going to leave it at that. The point being, at SuperSport United, if you're Spesi Ndlovu, for instance, if you get 2 games at Orlando Pirates, suddenly when you go to SuperSport United, you get 8. And I'm saying that to make the point that I don't want to look at, even though they do count, but I don't want to look at his time at SuperSport United, because Sipho Mbule would obviously play at SuperSport United. But ever since getting his big move to Mamelodi Sundowns, and there might be a couple of factors. I don't want to be naive about this. There might be a couple of factors as to why he didn't play. And part of those would have been what's on display for all of us, is that he lacks in the professionalism department, right? So maybe part of why he misses those games is the professionalism. But whatever reason that it is, I have noticed that what he kind of averages in the last 3 seasons, the 2 seasons he spent at Mamelodi Sundowns and the last season he spent at Sekhukhune, is he's playing about 800 minutes out of 2,700, which has made me feel silly for being so optimistic as to think he's going to play 15. He very well might play 15. I can't project the future, but I'm just going to look at the last 3 seasons and I'm going to extrapolate. And I'm thinking to myself, 800 minutes is fairly little. So 800 minutes, again, out of 2,700 is something like 1 out of 3 games. But the one game that he plays out of 3 games, he only plays 80 minutes and he misses the last 10 minutes of that one game, and then he misses 2 games. And so I guess if you kind of like multiply it, it would be about 10 games out of 30, but really 8 games out of 30 that he's going to be available based on the evidence in the last 3 seasons ever since moving to Mamelodi Sundowns. And I know this is just like a numbers game. It doesn't necessarily translate to what's going to happen in the future, right? Some people might want to talk about the fact that, hey, he would have learned an important lesson and maybe he's going to kick on now. He's 27 years old now, kind of entering that matured age, what we would expect 27 years old, you have to be maturing. 24, he's done the big move thing. He's gone to Mamelodi Sundowns. He's kind of done that whole thing that'll make him very excited and that kind of thing. And maybe this is the time where he realizes that, as many YouTubers have said, this is the last chance in his career, that kind of thing. And some ex-pros have said the same thing as well. Some Buccaneers who were doing an induction with him, and I have a lot to say even about the induction, but maybe on a different video. But yeah, there's just been a lot of talk about this is the last chance, and maybe he's going to mature and maybe take this and be a bit more professional, and maybe we'll see more of him on the pitch. But I'm just talking in terms of if we were to extrapolate from the amount of times we've actually seen him, or maybe not the amount of times, but the accumulation of minutes that we've seen him, they accumulate to about 8 games, if we were to expect based on evidence. They accumulate to about 8 games out of 30. And it's so long ago that he has done a good 21 games out of 30. That's way back when he was at SuperSport United, and that's the 2021 season. It's about 4 seasons ago now that he's had that amount of time on the pitch. And that is quite concerning for me, to be entirely honest. But having reasoned some more about it, I'm thinking, hey, I guess maybe that's why Orlando Pirates thought we're going to take a risk on this guy, because maybe Orlando Pirates is saying to himself, and I'm talking of Orlando Pirates being a figurehead, and we all know who the figurehead at Orlando Pirates is, the honorable chairman. I don't think the chairman makes the signing anyway, but I think Orlando Pirates, the football directors and the transfer department, I think they're going, we get to pick up someone who looks like the best player in South Africa when he's playing, in terms of midfielders anyway. Someone who looks like he's formidable and cannot be stopped. We get to pick him up to play 8 games for us, and we pick him up for free. And we take the risk because we think he might want to prove a point. If it works out, it's a massive deal that Orlando Pirates have pulled off with Sipho Mbule, because if the risk they've taken, Sipho Mbule is extra motivated to kind of change the narrative about himself, prove to everyone else the prospect and the potential that we see in him if he can play like more time, if he can have more time on the pitch and have consistent seasons. Maybe Orlando Pirates is thinking, hey, he might have that fire to prove that right now. Let's pick him up for free at the risk that it poses to us. What is the risk? That's the other thing I want to talk about. The risk is this. In the last few seasons, the Orlando Pirates dressing room has seemed very like the harmony in there. I wanted to say harmonious. I don't know if that's a word, but the harmony in the Orlando Pirates dressing room is something that when I heard about this signing, I wondered, do they want to risk affecting the peace in the dressing room? Like causing a stir in the dynamics of the dressing room. Like, do they want to risk that? You know, do they want to upset what's already there, what's been established, what the head coach, the previous head coach, Jose Rivero, seemed like he was such an architect of, which is the amazing atmosphere at the club. Do you want to upset that with kind of getting someone whom you got rid of, someone similar in that sense, which was Zungu, because when Pirates went for that, when Pirates got rid of Zungu because of his kind of like antics and things of that nature, I thought this is a statement from the club. They're saying, we're trying to keep a certain level of professionalism and discipline in our club, and we're not going to carry those people in our club. We're an ultimate elite professional environment, and we don't need that kind of drama. We don't need that kind of thing happening in our dressing room. But to me, it seemed like they're kind of going against themselves when we signed Sipho Mbule. Now, I'm not saying Pirates shouldn't have signed Sipho Mbule. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it seemed like they're kind of going against themselves, their own identity, in signing Sipho Mbule, because I thought they get rid of that kind of player. They got rid of Gabadino Mango, that kind of thing. You know, I thought, hey, look, I think Orlando Pirates is kind of making a statement to say, no, we're not doing that. We're not being like babysitters for people who are refusing to grow up and realize the opportunity that they have and the expectations that they have and the responsibility that they have. But now, you know, thinking about it in that Pirates is picking up someone who looks like the best midfielder again on his day in the country. And they're saying if we get 8 games out of him, out of 30, are they saying that he's that good that it's worth the risk? I think so. That's what I think. I think Orlando Pirates is looking at that and they're thinking it's worth the risk. We could revive this guy's career and we'll have picked him up at around his best years, age 27. And on top of that, I bet you they kind of negotiated a cut down salary because he gets an opportunity to come to a big club and revive his career, you know, and obviously the ball is not in his court in that regard. And the Pirates will negotiate terms that suit them. I think they will have negotiated option to extend rather than like a set fixed number of years in his contract. That seems pretty obvious to me. I feel like that's pretty much like simple logic to say, hey, we can give you a year with an option to extend. And I think the way that maybe it would work not to his advantage is that if he comes in this first season and he becomes the best player in the country, he will then want to renegotiate the terms of his contract, but Orlando Pirates can just trigger the extension of his contract and exercise their option to say, hey, no, we're going to keep you for an extra 2 years for the same salary, right? But I guess that's the situation that Mbule is in, unfortunately, and that barely warrants me telling you. We all know that, he knows that, I'm sure his agency knows that. But you know, having thought about it, I realize how much more it's like it hangs on a balance, the Sipho Mbule move. I know like we're overly optimistic because of how good he is. I've seen the starting lineups on social media already, you know. The technocrats have put out their starting 11s and they all have Sipho Mbule playing for us. And I'm kind of here saying to those technocrats to say, you're going to have him for 8 games out of 30. That's all I'm saying. Am I saying he's not good? Don't be silly. That's not what I'm saying. Am I saying Pirates shouldn't have signed him? I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying you're going to have potentially the best midfielder in South Africa on his day for 8 games out of 30. And yeah, that's not a regular starter. That's like a squad player, you know. I'm saying, basically, if you haven't heard anything, I'm saying Sipho Mbule, great as he is, he's a luxury squad player for us based on the evidence. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm glad to hear what you guys think. Up the mighty Bucks. Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video from Talking Buccaneers. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our future content.